Okay, guys, here we are. Another fun-filled episode of the Comic Book Syndicate. We're here at Villains Bistro, courtesy of our pal Jeff Zanetti. Anyway, we're here to talk about a few things today. One of them is our good friend Wolverine, who's probably the first or second most popular character from Marvel, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that was debatable until Iron Man came around. You know what I mean?
You know what? You're right. Nowadays, it's Iron Man.
Yeah, so now, I mean, but clearly Wolverine was, I mean, let's not forget Spidey and all that other stuff, but to comic fans, sure, he's certainly in I'd say the 80s, just shot right up to the top.
And you know what's funny is that it's actually sort of a commentary on his history that he's no longer as popular as he was, because I don't think it has anything to do with the actual character. I think it has to do with mismanagement and with misrepresentation. He was at the peak of his popularity in the 80s for a reason. He was one of many characters in the X-Men. He was a mystery. And what's since happened then, starting in the late 80s and early 90s, is they've given him his own solo series, followed by a second series. I believe now he's currently in at least 2 or 3 every month. And so unfortunately, there's a lot of really crappy Wolverine stories.
There is quite a few. And there had for a while now, too. This isn't that recent. I mean, since his popularity, I mean, like anything. You know what I mean? Like a gold rush, like there's money to be made. That's what companies do. And they went out to make a lot of money with Wolverine.
For a lot of my non-comic reading friends, I would say, you know what, you need to read Wolverine. They'll come into the comic shop, they look around, and they see all this garbage. And they'd say, I have no idea where to start. So...
Yeah, I think that the thing what we all want to say is he's probably in the top 3 of the most overexposed characters. Yes. So if you're going to start, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of him anymore. I think I'm tired of him. But I would read anything prior to the origins, so that you don't know a lot about him. And I think the best run still is, for me, is when he first was introduced in the early X-Men and then even in the Wolverine Limited series. But right there, we're just learning about him. He's also trying not to kill. Charles Xavier was always trying to keep him the rage in. That's kind of gone by the wayside, as he's now just runs around, claws out. So that's where I would recommend starting, is that early run of X-Men, especially the one where the Hellfire Club, where he sneaks through. I think that really started people to realize that this character is more than just a secondary character. He's got a lot of depth to him.
George, Wolverine.
I on the opposite. I still love reading him. I mean, I've gotten some really bad books where they let Alan Davis not only draw but write. And I love Alan Davis's artwork, but that guy can. But I mean, for myself, to just sort of enjoy the character, I really liked the first Wolverine regular series where he was Patch.
Yes.
Was that his nickname?
Chris Claremont and John Buscema.
Yeah, those annuals that came out. There's a Mike Mignola. There's, I think, 3 or 4 of them that came out. Prestige format ones. I think Alan Davis even did one of them. Yeah. But those, I think there's 3 to 4 of them, and they are really great little slices of Wolverine's personality where they're focusing more on the poetry of the character as opposed to the death and the violence and the, I do things better than everybody or whatever it is. Bub.
Well, the most famous Wolverine story is probably still the original miniseries by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. That's pretty much where I would tell everybody to start.
Some of the best covers ever. They're iconic. I mean, when you think of Wolverine, you think of those.
Other than the inks of Joseph Rubinstein, which I don't think suit Frank Miller's pencils, it's a classic story. It's the basis for the second Wolverine movie, which is still a piece of crap. But in any case, the original comic is great. But there's another Wolverine story that I think a lot of people have missed, and it's actually a Wolverine story by Warren Ellis from the late 90s, and it's called Not Dead Yet. And you'd never know it from the covers, because the covers are pretty generic. It's a 4-issue run, the regular Wolverine run, but it's by Warren Ellis, and it's a great story that I picked up only because of the art. And I was blown away by how good it was. That's an example of a very rare Wolverine story that's actually really good. Unfortunately, the character has been diluted because of the origin story, followed by the monthly series Origin, in which they reveal every iota of information about his past, which completely destroys the purpose of the character, right? I mean, Wolverine was better when you didn't know anything about him. He was better when he was struggling with
when he was the Boba Fett of the X-Men.
Exactly.
No?
So... Unfortunately, there are a lot of, like we said, a lot of bad Wolverine stories, but if you are going to start anywhere, probably best to go back to the original X-Men stories by Chris Claremont, Dave Cockrum, and John Byrne, followed by the limited series by Claremont and Frank Miller, and then a few rare stories that followed.
Comic Book Syndicate, assemble!
Here we are again at Villains Bistro for the latest segment of the Comic Book Syndicate. What in Christ's name are we talking about again? I can't remember.